May 1945, a German general sat in an American prison cell preparing to die. General Johannes Blaskowitz had commanded armies, killed Allied soldiers, and witnessed atrocities he had reported but could not stop. When the cell door opened, he expected execution. What he got was worse. The American officer who entered was not a sergeant with handcuffs. 3 stars gleamed on his collar. Ivory, handled revolvers rode his hips. General George S. Patton Jr. stopped just inside the threshold and saluted. His hand snapped to his forehead, parade ground perfect, holding it 3 full seconds long enough that every man in that hallway knew it was deliberate. Blaskowitz's breath caught, his mind reeled, a trick, some final humiliation before the bullet. General Blaskowitz, Patton's voice carried no mockery, no triumph. You will be moved to officer quarters immediately. I have assigned you an aid and bathing facilities. The words made no sense. Blaskowitz had spent 72 hours preparing for execution. He had commanded the 9th Army, held Warsaw, oversaw military districts where thousands died, Jews, partisans, civilians caught in the grinding machinery of occupation. The Americans knew this. They had the documents. Sir, Blaskowitz's voice cracked. I do not understand. Patton lowered his salute. You are a general officer. You will be treated as such until a court determines otherwise. I am your enemy. Blaskowitz needed him to understand. I killed American soldiers. I commanded you fought for your country. I fought for mine. Patton's jaw tightened. I respect that. Respect. Blaskowitz had been bracing for hatred, for vengeance, for the justice of victors who had seen the camps, the mass graves, the full horror of what Germany became. You honor your enemy. Patton's eyes, steel grey, exhausted, ancient, despite the man's relative youth, held his for a long moment. I honor warriors. Politics is for politicians. He turned to leave, then paused. Your aide will escort you to quarters in 10 minutes. Officers' mess. 800 hours. The door closed. The lock did not turn. Blaskowitz stared at the unlocked door, at his trembling hands, at the space where an American general had stood and offered not forgiveness, but something far more devastating. Recognition, peer to peer, soldier to soldier, as if the last 6 years of blood and unspeakable darkness could somehow still leave room for honor, as if he still deserved it. The hot water in his new quarters steamed gently. Blaskowitz had not had hot water in months. His Wehrmacht uniform lay in a filthy heap, stripped of insignia 3 days ago by nervous Gis who would not meet his eyes. He stripped and scrubbed methodically, watching dirt and grime swirl down the drain. In the mirror his body showed the war's cost, 20 pounds thinner, shrapnel scars from 1943, the grey pallor of too many sleepless nights. His hand trembled as he picked up the razor. The blade caught the light. He set it down carefully, precisely, the way an officer does everything. Not yet, not until he understood what was happening. The civilian clothes his aide delivered fit reasonably well. Grey slacks, white shirt, a jacket. He looked like a professor, not a general, not a war criminal awaiting judgment. When the aide returned, a young captain with perfect German and a slight Austrian accent, Blaskowitz followed him to the officers' mess with his heart hammering. The dining room was full of uniforms, American, British, French, the Allied command staff, officers who had spent years fighting Germany. Conversation stopped as Blaskowitz entered. Eyes tracked his movement like artillery finding range. A British Colonel Gay, haired chest covered in metals from both wars, stared with naked hatred. Blaskowitz straightened his spine. This I understand. This is honest. Then Patton entered from the opposite door. The room snapped to attention. Patton waved them down with characteristic impatience. Gentlemen, this is General Blaskowitz, formerly of the Wehrmacht 9th Army. He will dine with us tonight. The senior officers' table ran the length of the room. Patton at the head, an empty chair beside him clearly meant for Blaskowitz, every eye in the room watching as the German walked that long aisle between tables. The British colonel's face went purple. Sir, with respect, this is an outrage. Colonel Hastings, Patton's voice could cut steel. The general is here under military protocol. If you have objections, take them to Eisenhower. Otherwise, you may dine elsewhere. Hastings held Patton's gaze for a long, tense moment, then stood, threw his napkin on the table, and stalked out. The silence was deafening. Anyone else? Patton surveyed the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Good. Patton gestured to the empty chair. General Blaskowitz. Blaskowitz sat on numb legs. An American major passed him a plate. Actual food, not rations. Roasted chicken, potatoes, vegetables. The smell made his stomach clench with hunger and nausea in equal measure. Patton carved his chicken with surgical precision. Did not look at Blaskowitz when he spoke. You commanded the 8th Army in Poland, fall of 1939. It was not a question. Blaskowitz was back there instantly watching the SS follow his troops into Warsaw, documenting atrocities he could not stop, filing reports he knew would be ignored. He set down his fork. Yes, you filed 17 formal complaints about SS actions in occupied territory, mass executions of civilians. You demanded court-martials, the documents. Of course they had the documents. I did. You were ignored by high command and reassigned to France. Patton took a bite of potato, chewed deliberately, swallowed. Most officers did not file any complaints. Most pretended not to see. Blaskowitz's throat was sand dry. I saw. I reported, but I did not do enough, no. Patton's eyes finally met his. You did not. Neither did Rommel. Neither did a dozen other generals who filed reports and kept serving. You want me to say that is forgivable? No, sir, good, because it is not. Patton drank from his water glass. You are going to Nuremberg. You will testify about what you saw, what you reported, and what happened. Anyway, prosecutors will decide what that makes you witness, accessory, or war criminal. I understand, but until that decision is made, you are a general officer who fought for his country and surrendered with honor. Patton's voice dropped lower, harder. I have fought soldiers, and I have fought fanatics. Soldiers I respect even when I am killing them. Fanatics I put down like rabid dogs. You are a soldier, Blaskowitz, a soldier who served bastards, that does not erase the soldier part. Around them, the dining room had gone silent. Everyone listening, pretending not to listen. Blaskowitz stared at his plate, at the food he had not earned, at the casual humanity that felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Why, his voice broke. Why show me this courtesy? Why not just execute me and be done? Patton leaned back. Because if we become monsters to defeat monsters, they have won something even in losing. The Nazis took everything good about German military tradition and twisted it into something obscene. His jaw tightened. Your Iron Cross from the Great War. You think that meant nothing. Your father's service, the warrior's code you were raised to believe in. Hitler destroyed all that. But it existed once. It was real, and we need to remember the difference. He stood. The room stood with him. Finish your dinner, General. Tomorrow you will be transported to the interrogation facility. Tonight you are an officer in custody of the United States Army. Patton walked out. Gradually conversations resumed. Wary, uncomfortable, but they resumed. Blaskowitz picked up his fork with shaking hands, took a bite of chicken that tasted like ashes and grace, and everything he did not deserve. A young American lieutenant sat down across from him, fresh-faced, could not be more than 22. Sir, I am Lieutenant Patterson, part of your escort detail tomorrow. Blaskowitz nodded, waiting for the hatred. My brother died at Aachen 1st Infantry Division. Here it was, the accusation. Blaskowitz prepared himself. I am sorry for your loss, me too. Patterson stared at his plate. General Patton gave us a lecture before you arrived. Said you had filed complaints about the SS. Said you tried to stop some of what happened and got reassigned for it. That does not absolve. I know. Does not bring my brother back either. Patterson's eyes were hard but not cruel. But it means something. I do not know what yet, but it means you tried. The lieutenant left. Blaskowitz sat surrounded by enemies who were not treating him like an enemy, and felt something inside him crack, not break, crack like ice over deep water, splitting to reveal the darkness beneath. The meal ended. His aide escorted him back to his quarters. Blaskowitz lay on the bed, clean sheets, a pillow, the luxury of a mattress, and stared at the ceiling. Respect, Patton said. The word was a weight crushing his chest because respect is earned through honor. And Blaskowitz knew with terrible clarity that whatever honor he once had was forfeit the moment he continued serving after those reports were ignored. But Patton gave it to him anyway, not forgiveness, not absolution. Recognition that he was once something before the right twisted it into darkness. It was more devastating than any execution could be. On the desk, His razor gleamed in the moonlight. Not yet. First testimony. 3 weeks later, an American military prosecutor sat across from Blaskowitz in a bare interrogation room. Lieutenant Colonel Warren was 40, balding with exhausted eyes that had read too many atrocity reports. Let us go through the timeline again. General October 1939. Your first complaint about SS executions in the Warsaw district. Yes, Blaskowitz had repeated this 17 times already. Each interrogation chipping away another layer. I documented mass shootings of civilians. I requested military tribunals who received these reports. General von Brauch, Army High Command, response, verbal acknowledgement, no action. The words were catechism now. November 2nd, complaint with more evidence. Warren slid a document across the table. This one, Blaskowitz looked at his own handwriting from 5.5 years ago. Careful military language, professional distance while describing murder. The attitude of the troops towards the SS alternates between disgust and hatred. Every soldier feels sickened and repelled by these crimes committed in Poland by members of the Reich. He had believed that mattered, that documenting disgust was resistance. No response to the second complaint, he continued mechanically. January 1943rd complaint directly to General Catel at OKW, and relieved of command in May, reassigned to occupation duties in France. Warren made notes. You are aware your reports reached Hitler himself. I learned that after the war, Blaskowitz's voice was flat. I learned many things after. Did you consider resigning? The question was a lance through his chest. Every day, Colonel, every single day, but you did not know. Why, Blaskowitz had asked himself this 10-0 times in his cell at night during interrogations, watching Germany's ruins slide past truck windows. I told myself a soldier does not abandon his post, that Germany needed good officers to counterbalance the madness, that I could do more good inside than outside. He met Warren's eyes. I told myself many things. None were true. The truth is, I was a coward. I chose my career and my conception of duty over doing what was right. Warren's pen stopped moving. That is quite an admission. It is the only admission that matters. The interrogation continued for another 2 hours. Documents, dates, chain of command structures, who knew what, when did they know it, what actions were taken or not taken. Warren's voice pulled him back to the interrogation room. You will be called as a witness when trials begin. The prosecution wants your testimony about Wehrmacht SS separation, how military leadership handled atrocity reports. I will testify to everything I know, even if it incriminates you, especially then. Warren almost smiled. General Patton said you would say that. He thinks you are one of the few who actually understands accountability. The mention of Patton sent complicated emotion through Blaskowitz's chest. He had not seen the American general since that first dinner, but the man's presence followed him like a ghost. General Patton treats honor like it is something absolute, Blaskowitz said quietly, like it can exist even in men who have failed at it. Maybe it can. Warren headed for the door. Tomorrow you will be moved to the main detention complex. You will be housed with other senior officers awaiting trial, some defendants, some witnesses. Guards are instructed to maintain proper protocols. After Warren left, Blaskowitz sat alone in the interrogation room. A guard waited by the door with professional patience. Proper protocols. The Americans maintained them throughout. Not kindness exactly. Blaskowitz had no illusions about his status, but correct treatment military. The way Patton saluted him that first day, acknowledging the rank even while holding him prisoner. It would be easier if they treated him like a monster, beat him, starved him, screamed accusations. He could accept that, settle into the villain role, and accept punishment with resignation. But this careful, devastating respect, it forced him to remain human, to stay inside the recognition that he was once an officer who believed in honor, and that made his failures so much heavier. His new cellmate at the detention complex was another general awaiting trial, another man with documents showing he had witnessed atrocities, filed reports, kept serving anyway. They did not speak the first night, just lay in narrow beds, staring at opposite walls, wrapped in private guilt. On the second day, his cellmate broke the silence. They are calling us witnesses, not defendants. Think that means something. Blaskowitz thought of Patton's words, "Soldiers I respect, fanatics I put down like rabid dogs." "I think there is a difference," he said slowly, "between believing in what was done and just allowing it because standing against it was too hard. And which are we? I do not know. I honestly do not know." Over the following days, a strange routine developed. Morning roll call by American guards who maintained perfect military courtesy. Breakfast where German generals ate the same rations as Allied soldiers. Interrogations conducted by prosecutors who never tortured, never threatened, just documented. Evenings, prisoners socialized in a common room, a surreal existence. Generals who had commanded armies now playing chess while awaiting trials that could end in execution. One evening, a heated argument erupted. A newcomer, a colonel, early 40s, was vibrating with rage about their treatment. Blaskowitz looked up from his soup. "Would you prefer they beat you? I would prefer they be honest about what this is." "They hate us, they should act like it. They are acting like soldiers," his cellmate said quietly, "which is more than we deserve." The colonel's face went red. "We fought for Germany. We did our duty, did you?" The words came out harder than Blaskowitz intended. "Did you file reports when you saw civilians murdered? Did you object when the SS rounded up Jews in your sector? Or did you tell yourself it was not your responsibility? Soldiers do not question orders. You were just doing your duty." The common room went silent. The colonel stood, fists clenched. "You dare judge me? Thousands died in territories under your authority. Yes." Blaskowitz stood too. His voice dropped to something quiet and deadly. "They did, and I filed reports. When those reports were ignored, I continued to serve. I told myself I was being a good German officer. I was wrong, and the Americans treating me with military courtesy instead of beating me only makes that wrongness sharper. You are a traitor to Germany. Germany died when we allowed honor to be sacrificed for loyalty to a madman. These Americans, they are showing us what we lost, what we were supposed to be and failed at being." The colonel stormed out, but Blaskowitz felt eyes on him, assessing, considering. A young American guard approached with coffee. "Sir, General Patton called, asked to be updated on your status. Why would he care?" The guard shrugged. "Above my pay grade, sir, but he calls every few days, wants to know you are being treated properly." After the guard left, his cellmate leaned close. "They are teaching us something, are they not? What, that honor exists even when everything else has failed, that you can respect your enemy and still hold him accountable." He struggled for words, that maybe we were not entirely wrong to believe in the warrior's code. We just served the wrong cause. Blaskowitz thought of Patton's salute of AIDS patient courtesy of Lieutenant Patterson, whose brother died at Ain, who could have spit in his face, but instead said it means something that you tried. "I think they are teaching us that honor is a choice." Blaskowitz said slowly, "Every day, every moment, you choose it or you do not. We told ourselves we did not have a choice. We had to serve, follow orders, maintain discipline, even when discipline meant enabling atrocity." He looked at his hands, "But we did have a choice. We just did not make it. And now we testify. We tell the truth. We accept whatever judgment comes." Blaskowitz met his cellmate's eyes, not because it absolves us, but because it is the only honorable thing left to do. That night, lying in his bunk, Blaskowitz composed a letter to his daughter, Maria. He had been avoiding it for weeks. How do you tell your child that everything she believed about you is a lie? But Patton's words echoed. We need to remember the difference. He wrote through the night, crossing out lines, starting over, telling her about the reports he had filed, the orders he had followed anyway, the Americans treating him with respect he did not deserve, and what that respect was. Teaching him about the difference between honor and loyalty. "You asked me once what it means to be a soldier. I told you it means service to your country. I was wrong. It means service to what is right, even when your country demands otherwise. Especially then I failed that test. Maria, the Americans are showing me what I should have been." He did not know if he would be able to send it, did not know if she would ever forgive him, but he wrote it anyway, because testimony is not just for courts. It is for the people who believed in you and deserve to know how you failed them. On the desk, his razor caught the lamplight. He looked at it for a long moment, then turned back to the letter. Not yet. November 1945, the Nuremberg trials began. February 1946, Johannes Blaskowitz was called as a witness. He walked into the courtroom in civilian clothes, the same grey suit his aide had given him 9 months ago. The defendant sat in 2 rows, Goering in front, still defiant. Kell staring at his hands, Jodl's face a mask, men who gave the orders, who built the machinery of death. Blaskowitz was not sitting with them. He stood at the witness stand under oath to tell the truth. Chief prosecutor was Robert Jackson, American. His questions were precise, devastating. General Blaskowitz, describe your first complaint regarding SS activities in occupied Poland. Blaskowitz described it. The mass graves, the shootings, the systematic murder disguised as security operations. His voice steady, eyes forward, reciting facts that damned everyone in the room, including himself, and the response, no meaningful response, sir. I was eventually relieved of command, yet you continued to serve the Wehrmacht for 5 more years. Yes, why? The courtroom was silent. Newsreel cameras whirred. Blaskowitz looked at the defendants, some defiant, some broken, all guilty. I told myself I was doing my duty, that a soldier serves regardless of politics, that I could be more effective working within the system. He paused. I was wrong on all counts. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what resigning would cost me, afraid of being labelled a traitor, afraid of losing my career, my honor, my self-conception as a good officer serving Germany. And now, what do you believe now? I believe honor is meaningless if it is conditional. I believe duty to country is subordinate to duty to humanity. I believe his voice cracked. I believe I failed every test that mattered, and that thousands who died in territories under my authority died in part because I chose comfort over courage. The testimony continued for 4 hours. Documents, dates, the careful architecture of genocide, and the military officers who witnessed it and did nothing or too little. When it ended, Jackson had one final question. General Blaskowitz, you were treated with military courtesy by General Patton when you surrendered. Why do you think he did that? Blaskowitz looked at the defendants, at the judges, at the camera. Recording this for history, because General Patton understood something we forgot. That the warrior's code exists independent of the cause you serve. That you can respect your enemy's courage and still hold him accountable for his crimes. That honor is not about loyalty to a nation or a leader. Is about loyalty to principles that transcend both. He took a breath. He treated me with respect to teach me what respect actually means and to show that even in defeating us, the Allies remained different from what we became. The courtroom erupted, spectators shouting, defendants screaming denials. The judges calling for order. Blaskowitz was escorted out by American military police back to his cell, back to waiting. In May 1946, he received a letter, American postmark, no return address, inside a single sheet in precise handwriting. General Blaskowitz, I read your testimony. You told the truth. Even when it condemned you, that is more than most men manage. You asked me once why I treated you with respect. The answer is simple. Because the moment we stop seeing our enemies as human beings capable of honor, we become what we are fighting against. You failed your tests during the war, but you are passing them now. That counts for something. George S. Patton Jr. Blaskowitz read it 3 times, folded it carefully, placed it in his pocket next to his father's Iron Cross. The trials continued through summer and fall. Blaskowitz testified twice more, once about military chain of command, once about Wehrmacht-SS separation. Each time he told the truth without mitigation, without excuse. September 1946, verdicts came down. Göring, death by hanging. Keitel, death by hanging. Jodl, death by hanging. In November, the prosecutors met with Blaskowitz. We are not charging you, Warren said. Your testimony was invaluable. Your documented complaints show Wehrmacht awareness and complicity, but also resistance. You are being released to custody of the occupation government pending further investigation. I should be charged. The words came out flat. Certain. I commanded those territories. I failed to stop what happened. That is not my decision, General. The tribunal has ruled. Blaskowitz was transferred to a different facility. Less prison, more administrative detention. He was given work cataloguing Wehrmacht documents, translating reports, building the historical record of how Germany's military became complicit in genocide. It was during this work that he found the documents detailing what happened to the people in territories he once commanded. Numbers, names when available, dates of deportation, of execution, of death in camps he had heard whispers about but never truly believed could exist at such scale. His third complaint from Poland, the one sent to Kittel, was there in the files with a handwritten note in the margin. General Blaskowitz is to be watched. potential unreliability regarding racial policy. They knew, everyone knew, and they did it anyway, and he kept serving anyway. On his desk, his father's razor gleamed. He picked it up, felt its weight, set it down, picked up his pen instead, started another letter to Maria. The letters accumulated over months. Blaskowitz wrote to Maria every week. She wrote back in March 1947. Careful, measured, not the girl's voice, he remembered. Papa, I received your letters. I do not know what to say. I am angry. I am heartbroken. But I am also proud that you are telling the truth now. Mother says I should not write, that you have shamed the family. But silence is what enabled all of this. He read it 17 times. In May 1947, Patton's widow wrote him. General Patton had died in December 1945, a car accident in occupied Germany, never knowing how his story with Blaskowitz would end. Mrs. Beatrice Patton's letter was brief. My husband spoke of you several times before his death. He believed you represented something important, that good men could serve evil causes, and that recognizing their humanity did not mean excusing their failures. He wanted you to know that honor is something you can lose and work toward regaining even if you never fully reclaim it. He believed you were doing that work. I hope you continue. Blaskowitz kept the letter with Patton's earlier one. 2 pieces of paper, 2 attempts to show him something about who he could have been, who he still might become in whatever time remained. The work continued. Documents, testimony, building the historical record. At night, he stared at his father's razor. Weight was growing heavier. In September 1947, Warren visited him at the document facility. There was talk of additional trials, smaller cases, command responsibility for specific atrocities. Your name keeps coming up as defendant, as witness, maybe defendant. The evidence is complicated. You filed complaints, but you also signed administrative orders that enabled SS operations in your districts. You did not order the killings, but you provided the infrastructure that made them possible. So I am guilty. Legally, that is for courts to decide. Morally, Warren shrugged. I am a prosecutor, not a priest, but I will tell you this. Most of the officers we are investigating did not file any complaints, did not document anything, just pretended not to see. That has to count for something, does it? I do not know, General. I honestly do not know. After Warren left, Blaskowitz sat in his small office surrounded by documents detailing the machinery of genocide. His hands trembled as he read through another report, this one from his own district in Poland, 1939. An SS operation in a village he had never visited, 140 civilians executed for suspected partisan activity. His signature was on the transportation authorization, the Wehrmacht trucks that carried the SS to that village. He had not known what they were going to do, but he could have asked, should have asked, could have refused, did not. That night, he wrote to Maria telling her about the new testimony request, about command responsibility, about the difference between ordering atrocities and enabling them. Her response arrived 3 days later. Papa, you have testified. You have told the truth. Stop torturing yourself. Come home when they release you. We will figure out how to live with what happened together. He placed it carefully in his desk drawer next to Patton's letters, his father's iron cross and the razor. Looked at all 4 items, made his choice. February 5th, 1948. Johannes Blaskowitz woke before dawn in his quarters at the document facility. He had been awake most of the night, really lying in bed. Watching darkness give way to grey preyed on light through his window, he rose, dressed with the same meticulous care he had brought to 40 years of military service, wrote 3 letters, one to Maria, one to Warren, one to Mrs. Beatrice Patton. Then he walked to the bathroom carrying his father's razor. The blade was sharp, his hand was steady, the cut was clean. They found him an hour later. The letter to Maria was delivered unopened per his instructions. Its contents remained private. Maria would never share them publicly, carrying her father's final words as a burden too heavy for the world to bear. But years later, she would tell an interviewer, he said he could not live with what he had allowed to happen, that being treated with honor when he did not deserve it was harder than any punishment, that he hoped his testimony would help ensure no soldier ever again mistakes obedience for honor, and that he was grateful the Americans, especially General Patton, had shown him what he had lost, shown him the difference between who he was and who he should have been. He said that recognition was the greatest gift and the greatest curse they could have given him. The funeral was small, American military chaplain, a few Wehrmacht officers who had testified at Nuremberg. His aide attended the young captain with the Austrian accent, now a major older, carrying the weight of too many stories like this one. No German military honors. At Blaskowitz's written request, his father's Iron Cross was buried with him, the warrior's code of an older Germany laid to rest with the man who had tried to uphold it in an era when it meant nothing. In his final diary entry found among his papers, Blaskowitz had written, "Patton was right about everything." He said, "Politics is for politicians, but that is where I was wrong all along. Honor is not separate from politics. When politics becomes evil, honor demands you resist even at cost of duty, career, life itself." I learned this too late from an enemy who showed me more respect than I showed the innocent people who died while I filed reports and followed orders. The salute he gave me in that cell was more devastating than any bullet because it recognized what I once was, what I could have been, what I failed to be, and I have to live with that recognition every moment of every day. Or rather, I do not. This is my final choice, the one I should have made in 1939 when the first reports were ignored. Not surrender, not service, but accountability on my own terms. George S. Patton had died in December 1945, long before Blaskowitz's testimony before the suicide, before any of it concluded. But his letter to Maria, written in October 1945, was found among Blaskowitz's papers after his death. Maria had sent it to him, and he had kept it. "I treated your father with respect because he was a soldier who tried to do the right thing in circumstances that made the right thing nearly impossible. He failed, but his failure was human, not monstrous. The monsters were the men who gave the orders and built the death camps. Your father was a good man who served an evil cause. That does not excuse him, but it means something that he tried to fight it even weakly. In war, we need to remember the difference between the monster and the man who could not stop the monster. Both are guilty, but they are not the same. Maria kept that letter for the rest of her life. Showed it to her children, her grandchildren. A reminder that honor is complicated, that complicity and resistance can exist in the same person, that the world is rarely divided cleanly into heroes and villains. That sometimes the most devastating thing an enemy can do is treat you with the respect you failed to earn, and that testimony speaking truth, even when it condemns you, is the only path back toward whatever honor might remain when everything else has turned to ash. Today, military historians debate Johannes Blaskowitz's legacy. Some call him a resister, citing his 17 formal complaints against SS atrocities, more than any other Wehrmacht general filed. Others call him complicit, noting he continued to serve for 5 years after those complaints were ignored, providing administrative support that enabled genocide, even if he did not order it directly. The truth is probably both. He was a man who believed in an ideal of military honor that did not survive contact with totalitarian evil, who tried to fight within the system and learned too late that some systems cannot be fought from within, who received respect from his enemies that taught him how far he had fallen from what he once believed himself to be. The meeting between Patton and Blaskowitz lasted less than 10 minutes. A salute, a few words, a choice to treat a captured enemy as a fellow soldier rather than simply a monster. But sometimes 10 minutes of recognition can be more devastating than any punishment. Sometimes being shown who you are supposed to be is heavier than any sentence a court could impose. In the end, General Patton taught Blaskowitz the cruelest lesson of all, that being treated with the honor you once had is more devastating than any punishment when you know you have lost it forever. The salute that saved his dignity destroyed his soul. And perhaps that was the point all along, that real accountability is not about punishment. It is about recognition, about being forced to see who you were, who you became, and living with the difference. Or in Blaskowitz's case, not living with it.